At 9:17 p.m., a Tyrannosaurus Rex became a missile. Not a metaphor. Not a weapon. An actual 9-ton missile. Flying through a space station, crashing through steel walls, destroying everything in its path. And somehow, that wasn't even the most dangerous thing happening that night. Because somewhere else on the station, people were disappearing inside floating oceans. And nobody knew why. To understand how a dinosaur became a missile, we need to go back exactly 37 minutes. Because that's when the laws of physics stopped behaving normally. The station was called Biosphere, humanity's greatest achievement. A city among the stars, not just another metal space station. An entire world. Forests stretched for miles beneath artificial sunlight. Waterfalls cascaded into crystal lakes. Rivers wound through valleys. Birds filled the air. And hidden within these ecosystems were creatures that hadn't walked the earth for 66 million years. Dinosaurs. Real living dinosaurs. For decades, Biosphere had been perfect. Scientists studied extinct animals. Tourists traveled from across the solar system. Families raised children there. Nobody imagined the station would become a death trap. Then one warning appeared. Artificial gravity offline. First, nobody panicked. Gravity systems don't just fail. They have backups. And backups for those backups. The announcement had to be a mistake. Then the countdown began. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And suddenly the floor disappeared. Coffee floated out of cups. Tools drifted from workbenches. Leaves rose from the ground. Vehicles lifted from parking platforms. Within seconds, 50,000 people found themselves floating through the air. For 23 seconds, it was fun. Children laughed. People recorded videos. Some even cheered. Until the second warning arrived. Aquatic sector breach detected. And the laughter stopped instantly. Because Biosphere didn't just contain dinosaurs. It contained oceans. Massive artificial oceans holding millions of gallons of water. One of those containment walls had just failed. The reinforced glass cracked. Then shattered. An entire ocean escaped. But in zero gravity, water doesn't flood. It transforms. Instead of rushing through corridors, the water formed giant floating spheres. Entire lakes became drifting planets. Some were the size of cars. Others were the size of houses. The station suddenly looked like a miniature solar system made entirely of water. Beautiful. Silent. Mesmerizing. People couldn't stop staring. Then one of the floating oceans moved. Not drifted. Moved. Something inside it changed direction. At first everyone assumed it was debris. Then they saw the eye. A giant black eye staring back through the water. And suddenly everyone understood what had escaped. A Mosasaurus. 30 feet long. Hundreds of razor-sharp teeth. One of the largest marine predators in Earth's history. Unlike the humans, the Mosasaurus didn't care that gravity had disappeared. Inside those floating oceans it was perfectly at home. In fact, it may have become even more dangerous. The creature began moving silently between floating water worlds, vanishing into one sphere, appearing from another. Nobody knew where it would emerge next. Every floating ocean became an ambush. Every corridor became a trap. Within hours people stopped fearing the gravity failure. They started fearing water. Most survivors believed the Mosasaurus would become the station's biggest threat. They were wrong. Because the Mosasaurus wasn't the fastest creature adapting to zero gravity. Instead, the title belonged to the Raptors. And what happened next terrified even the station's scientists. When the raptor enclosure failed, people expected chaos. What they didn't expect was intelligence. That velociraptors learned almost immediately. In zero gravity, every wall is a floor. Every ceiling is a floor. Every surface becomes a launching platform. Instead of running, they pushed off walls, glided through corridors, changed direction in midair, and attacked from angles humans couldn't predict. Ventilation shafts became highways. Maintenance tunnels became hunting grounds. Security cameras captured shadows moving where no animal should have been able to move. The raptors were learning, adapting, evolving their behavior in real time. Entire sections of the station went silent. People disappeared. Doors remained locked. Emergency calls stopped mid-sentence. Fear spread faster than the system failure itself. At this point, most survivors believed the station had reached peak disaster. Gravity was gone. The oceans were alive. The raptors were hunting. Surely things couldn't get worse. They were wrong. Because deep inside Sector 7, the largest predator on the station had just escaped. A Tyrannosaurus Rex. 9 tons. 40 feet long. And completely terrified. Now here's where the story becomes insane. The T-Rex wasn't adapting like the raptors. It wasn't hunting like the Mosasaurus. It was panicking. And that's what made it dangerous. The dinosaur couldn't stand. It couldn't walk. It couldn't understand why the ground had disappeared. So it reacted the only way it knew how. It bit. The force of that bite pushed its massive body backward. The second bite sent it spinning. The third launched it into a steel support beam. The impact crushed an entire corridor. A laboratory vanished in seconds. Scientists were thrown through the air. Walls collapsed. Alarms screamed. The dinosaur wasn't attacking anyone. It wasn't even trying to move. Physics was moving it. Every bite accelerated it. Every collision redirected it. Every impact turned it into something more dangerous. A living missile. A breathing wrecking ball. A 9-ton physics experiment gone horribly wrong. One moment it smashed through a research lab. The next it burst through residential housing. Then disappeared into darkness. Only to crash through another wall hundreds of meters away. Nobody knew where it would appear next. And that's what terrified everyone. You couldn't outrun it. You couldn't predict it. You couldn't negotiate with it. Because the T-Rex wasn't making decisions. Momentum was. And momentum doesn't care if you survive. But even the dinosaurs weren't the real disaster. Because every collision was damaging critical infrastructure. Power systems failed. Containment systems failed. Communication systems failed. Then engineers discovered something horrifying. Biosphere wasn't just losing gravity. It was losing orbit. The entire station was slowly falling. The countdown had truly begun. Emergency lights flashed red across every sector. Reactor alarms echoed through the corridors. Smoke drifted through the air. Escape pods filled instantly. Thousands of people raced toward evacuation zones. Behind them floated giant oceans. Above them lurked raptors. And somewhere in the darkness, a terrified T-Rex continued ricocheting through the station like a prehistoric missile. The station that represented humanity's future was dying. One system at a time. Then the final order arrived. Abandon Biosphere immediately. No debate. No delay. Leave now. One by one escape pods launched into the darkness of space. Families separated. Scientists abandoned decades of research. Entire lives were left behind. The survivors watched through tiny windows as Biosphere drifted away. A city that had once symbolized humanity's greatest achievement. Now broken. Silent. Dying. Floating oceans still drifted through shattered corridors. The Mosasaurus was still somewhere inside. The raptors were still hunting. And deep within the station, a terrified Tyrannosaurus Rex was still tumbling endlessly through zero gravity. For the first time in hours, the survivors finally felt safe. The nightmare was over. Or so they thought. Because just before the last escape pod prepared to jump away, something drifted past the window. Small. Round. Spinning slowly through space. First it looked like debris. Then somebody noticed the cracks. It wasn't debris. It was an egg. A dinosaur egg. The pod fell silent. Everyone stared. And then, something moved inside. Which means the disaster of Biosphere Station may not have ended with the station. It may have escaped with them. And somewhere out there, the next chapter may already be waiting. The T-Rex survived. The Mosasaurus survived. The egg survived. What other impossible things are waiting out there in the dark? This is the Escape Edit. Hit subscribe. Because next time, we're going even further.